We break all the rules. This is News Radio WRVA.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's 9:04 this morning on Richmond's Morning News. News Radio WRVA. Thanks for joining us. I do want to talk about the price of going to the grocery store. I'm convinced. I'm really convinced. I hear about the consumer price index and all the rest of these things that the elite Harvard, Princeton economists want to say. I'm convinced people measure the economy and how they're doing by two things: the price of gasoline and the price of ground beef. You can't have filet mignon on Tuesday, but I certainly could have a hamburger or something with ground beef. Now, are you shying away from ground beef because it's too high? A lot of people seem to think so. And I am a big proponent of cattle ranching, the cattle industry. So let's find out what's really going on. Why is the price of beef going up? The president has done something. The governor's not happy with it. He's importing beef and suspending some tariffs. Let's find out what's really going on with our beef industry, especially here in Virginia. Brandon Reeves is the executive director of the Virginia Cattlemen's Association, and he's joining us here on News Radio WRVA. I'm going to say howdy to you. I'm not wearing my Stetson today. I probably should have, but I'm excited to talk to you, Brandon.
Yes, sir. We'll forgive you for that, but really appreciate you having us on.
Okay. Tell me about our industry, our cattlemen's industry here in Virginia first. That's the big thing I want to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, our cattle producers work hard every day. Agriculture is the biggest private industry in Virginia, and raising cattle is the second ranking commodity in terms of cash receipts. We've got over 1.3 million head of cattle in Virginia, so it's a very important industry to the state. And we're largely a cow-calf state, meaning that we've got, of those 1.3 million cattle, about 575,000 are what we call mama cows, and raising the baby calves, and so it's a really important part of what we do.
And as we look at our cattle industry here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, something that you and I talked about off air, the governor brought up about Virginia beef, and I want to get to that in just a little bit later in our conversation. But tell me how our cattle here work through the supply chain to get to the grocery stores.
Yes, sir. No, thanks for asking that question. So we typically, wean calves about 7 or 8 months of age, and a lot of those calves are then sold and backgrounded, a lot of them here in Virginia, until they weigh, 800, 900 pounds. And at that point in time, most of the cattle are exported out of the state to feed yards. And so there are a lot of farmer feeders that have bought our cattle for decades in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Iowa, in the Midwest, and even the Canadian market in Ontario has opened up for us here the past 10 or 15 years. And so a lot of those cattle are sold into feed yards into other states. And then from there, they'll go to the processing facility. A lot of them historically went to JBS's Salterton plant that's recently been shut down. And then a lot of them also went to Tyson's Joslyn plant there in Illinois, which also was recently shut down. So we've had a pretty big disruption there here as well.
And I bring that up for anybody that's ever watched Yellowstone, or for me, I grew up on the cattle ranch. This is your livelihood. Brandon Reeves joining us right now, executive director of the Virginia Cattlemen's Association. It is not an easy job. I told you off air that one of my jobs as a kid, when a mama cow would reject a baby calf, they'd bring it back to my grandparents' house, and I had to go ride my bike after school, feed that calf to make sure that they were big enough that we could get them back into the herd. I would go with my grandfather and move irrigation pipe because it was all grass-fed beef where I grew up in California. Here in Virginia, with the weather that we have and the way the market goes, we will raise them, and then we'll send them to get fattened up before they get into the food chain that ends up in your grocery store. So this is really a tough place, and it's a tough job, and it's an unforgiving job for those that are in the Cattlemen's Association in part of our Virginia cattlemen's group here. It's not easy work, and it's 7 days a week, 365. Cowboys do not take days off, and that's why I wanted to explain all this. So let's talk about the herds, and I'm going to get to the price of beef. Right now, I know the herds are thin across the country, meaning if you got a female heifer and you've got a male, you hold on to those heifers because they'll produce more babies. You have more calves into the herd. If times are lean and you can't expand your herd, those go out to market. Where are we right now as far as how full our herds are in the supply of beef in this country?
Yes, sir. Well, we're at record lows. I know when the July inventory report came out, it was the smallest July inventory of beef cows on record at 28.5 million head. And that's, across the country. And so there's a lot of things that factor into that. Our herd typically expands and contracts in a 10 to 12 year cycle. So where we were at in that cycle, combined with some exceptional drought over the past several years, including this year in Virginia, have kind of made producers in some cases sell, heifers and cows that they otherwise might have hung on to. And then we've had the closure of the Mexican border, which, typically we get over 1 million feeder cattle from Mexico a year, which it just now is reopening. But all that has led to just really tight supplies across the country.
So what we're talking about is the Mexican screwworm. It was a parasite that was down in Mexico, so we had to cut off the supply. And we talk about feeder cows. There are places like in Virginia where we'll have the calves. When they get big enough, then you put them off to a place where they get fattened up and into the supply chain. So Virginia would do a lot of those into the Midwest. Mexico would do a lot of those in here into the United States. We had to cut that off. So the herd has been thinned so badly. We see the price of beef that has gone up and up and up and up and up, except for my tri-tip that I cooked over at Tom Leonard's, which was outstanding. But it is tough for people to afford beef on a daily basis. The president bringing in foreign ground beef. What's that going to do to the market? What's that going to do on the ranch to a Virginia cattleman?
Sure. So in the short term, obviously it's going to lead to lower prices for us. I mean, anytime you bring in a supply of beef at that magnitude, it is going to impact the supply that's already there. And so we've already seen a pretty drastic drop in cash prices and futures prices for cattle. We're now all of the feeder cattle futures contracts for 2027 are below $3 as of yesterday. And then in the long term, we're concerned that anytime you inject uncertainty into the market, it's going to make producers think twice about retaining more heifers or expanding the herd. And so we're concerned long term that it may head off any herd rebuilding that we're prepared to do, because we've got to have confidence that things like this aren't going to happen, that the prices are going to be somewhat sustainable for us in the years to come.
I understand what that means, being on the ranch. How much, okay, this is a goofy question I'm going to throw out at you. I'm going to throw you a curveball. How much has Kevin Costner in that television show helped the Cattlemen's Association explain what life is really like raising beef, knowing that there's drought, there's disease? I mean, your whole herd could get wiped out. It is a precious commodity. How much does that help people understand how difficult it is to get a steak on the plate?
Absolutely. No, I think the show did a great job of kind of showing, all of America, the country, of what our producers deal with on a daily basis, and all the factors that go into, whether or not we're able to continue doing what we do. I mean, you mentioned it: weather, disease, not being able to always control the price that we're getting for our cattle, regulations. There's you name it, and our producers kind of have to manage it, and they do a great job of it. But it is thankless work in a lot of cases, and that I think that show Yellowstone did a great job of highlighting that for the general public.
So I understand, the American consumers need a break. So we're going to see the price of ground beef go down, but as you said, and there's a couple legislators who have said this, and this is bipartisan, those that understand agriculture and work in that part of the world, that it's going to be great for consumers short term, but it doesn't help our long-term goal of rebuilding our herd. And the reason, let me throw it out for everybody, is that if the price of beef goes down, that means the futures go down. That means the ranchers don't know if they expand their herd, are they going to lose money or make money on each individual head of cattle they have.
1 minute.
The uncertainty completely keeps this from rebuilding the herd. So what can we do? What would you like to see to rebuild the herd? Give us plenty of supply. The ranchers are able to make their money and have plenty of cattle, but then the consumers are able to see long-term stabilization of the price of beef.
Absolutely. No. Well, first off, we'd love to see a reversal of the administration's decision, which hopefully there's still time for that. But and we do. I want to say thank you to all the producers, all the folks that have called in, and our legislators and Governor Spanberger for standing up for us and making our case known. As far as what we can do, I think risk management is something that we've done a really good job of providing more risk management opportunities through crop insurance for our producers. But the cost of risk management right now for cattle producers is almost too high for them to be able to really do it. And so ways that we can improve, risk management and offer more options for breeding cattle, I think would be one thing. Second thing would be making sure that we have sustainable regional packing capacity. And so we're really concerned about that. I mean, we're obviously concerned about this announced import increase, but long-term, we're really concerned about the future of processing in our region of the country. And, here in Virginia, we've been discounted. Our cattle have been discounted a long time for trucking. And that was before we saw the closures of Saunderton and Joslyn. And so now we're really concerned that we're going to be at a disadvantage compared to, the Midwest and other places in the country. And so trying to find ways that we can expand and sustain, stable regional processing, I think would be really important. And then just, overall, just trying to make sure that we protect price discovery. We're doing things to protect the competitive market and giving our producers the confidence they need to retain that heifer and take that risk that she's going to be profitable in the future.
All right, we got to get you back on again real quick. Virginia beef. I know the governor had talked about this. I know this is something important to the Cattlemen's Association. Certified Virginia beef, because I'd love to start eating Virginia certified beef when I have my tri-tip cookout over at Tom Leonard's. Hey, help me get some Virginia produced beef.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you bringing that up. So if you go to www.vaverifiedbeef.com, we have, in partnership with VDAX, we're able to start the Virginia Verified Beef Program. We got legislation passed in 2024 and kind of launched that program last year. And so that means bred, born, raised, and processed in Virginia. And so at Virginia Cattlemen's, we're really focused on trying to create a more resilient supply chain, helping consumers be able to source local beef. And that's a great thing that we've done. So we encourage you to go check it out.
By the way, what's your favorite? What's your favorite cut of beef? What's your favorite steak?
If I have my choice, I'm eating a ribeye.
Me too, absolutely. Hey, this has been great. You're not going to be a stranger. We'll bring you back on the show. I think it's important that we understand how difficult the job is and how we can help build up our herd, especially here in Virginia. Ag is so important, something that I understand and I care about. So let's get you back on the show real soon.
Hey, I appreciate it, Rich. Anytime.
All right. Thank you so much. Brandon Reeves joining us, Executive Director of the Virginia Cattlemen's Association. All right. Super Dave's telling me, hey, we got to give tickets away to see the Richmond Flying Squirrels. So let's do that right now. I've got a family 4-pack of tickets for the game tonight. I'm going, you're going. We're all going to go to the game tonight. Here is the number for you to call, 833-804-1140, 833-804-1140, 833-804-1140. The light up right now. Dave, can we take caller number? Give me a number. He says 5. All right, caller number 5, 833-804-1140. Caller number 5. We'll email you the tickets. Give us a call right now. Win the tickets. Caller number 5, 833-804-1140.